Again, good afternoon to some of you. My name is Adrian Herder, and I am going to be the host for this webinar on the Black Mesa cartography map. So this is the screen you're seeing right now is more of our cover photo that we have here. So we've got a little title here, which can also be seen on our map as well. And this little subtext is an ancient aquifer, a legacy of coal, and the fight to bring the untold story of water to the surface. And today again is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. And we started this webinar today at 12, which is Flagstaff, Phoenix, Arizona time. And then we also wanted to keep in mind the time zones for the Navajo Nation and also Denver, Albuquerque, places like that, which is also goes off of Mountain Daylight Time. So very interesting. We might get into why that's very interesting, especially with this map, but yeah, we'll go from there. So again, for those of you that are just now joining us, my name is Adrian Herder, and I am the host for this webinar, and I am the media organizer for the nonprofit Tó Nizhóní Ání, which we translate as Sacred Water Speaks. So before we go into introductions for a lot of our speakers and our presenters, we went ahead and muted and turned off the video for a lot of our attendees, given that we've got a lot of information we would like to share with you all for this webinar, and that we want to kind of keep the focus on what's going on here. And the other thing is, if you have any questions for this webinar, we're going to wait until the end. I know that we've got a lot of information to share with you. We're excited to talk about this map. So just know that if you have any questions as the presentations are going, again, we're going to hold the presentation, or sorry, the questions until the very end. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter those questions in the chat, and our chat monitor will go ahead and take note of that. And if we do have time for it, we'll get to those questions, but some of our team members, presenters, might also be answering these questions in the chat as well too. So, excuse me, I just wanted to kind of put that out there. So, before we begin with our introductions, I wanted to give everyone a presentation outline. Again, this is our first webinar as an organization for 2025. So we're really excited to share the Black Mesa cartography map with you all, and kind of what went into this presentation, or this map, and all the interesting things when you look at the map as a greater piece. It's got a lot going on, but this webinar here is going to help to break it apart into different sections. So with this webinar, we've got it outlined into 6 areas that we're going to be talking about throughout this presentation. So for the first part, we're going to do introductions in a bit. And then the second part, we're going to go into who we are. So referring to introducing ourselves as an organization, as well as our partner, Four Corners Mapping and GIS. And then we're going to go into our organization's position as to why, the purpose of this map, why did we create this map? And then part 4 is going to be the discussion. So we're going to be talking about the different components of this map, hearing from a lot of our speakers here. To break down why did we put this on the map and things like that. And then number 5, we're going to have a section for resources and solutions. So this is going to be dedicated towards Delegate Germaine Simonson. And then lastly, we're going to close out with what's next after this presentation. Now that the map is done, what are some things with the closing section is like what's next, as well as ways to stay connected to our organization, as well as Four Corners Mapping and GIS. So that gives you an idea of what the presentation outline is looking like. All right, so without further ado, I will pass this over to our presenters, but first I will do my presentation, my introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrian Herder. Again, my name is Adrian Herder, and I'm the host for this webinar, as well as the media organizer for our organization, Tó Nizhóní Ání. And I will pass this off to Raeanna.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Sé Raeanna Johnson in the shirt Chishin Enchle, as she have Bush's Chin, Billigana, the Shitayado, because the kind of additional. I'll just be the back tech support and monitoring the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Raeanna. And then we will go on to our presenters. So the first one is Nicole.
Yeah, hey everyone. Chishin Enchle, Billigana, Bush's Chin, Kiani, the Shitayado, Billigana, the Shinale. I'm the Executive Director of Tó Nizhóní Ání. My name is Nicole Horseherder.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And Anna?
Hi, my name is Anna Riling. I am the owner of Four Corners Mapping in Durango, Colorado, and I worked with Adrian, Andrew, and Nicole to make the Black Mesa map.
All right. Thank you, Anna. And then Delegate Simonson, are you able to unmute yourself?
Oh, yeah, it's a good afternoon, everyone that's tuning in. This is Germaine Simonson. Ado chishin shnidot as a fan of chin sedeskiji definella. Ado kia ani edashache. Ado hard rock settle don't eat the shagan. Good afternoon, everyone, and my name is Germaine Simonson. I serve as a delegate for this region that where we're going to talk about the cartography, so where the cartography covers. So welcome everyone. Thank you.
Andrew, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Atencia. I'm a community organizer with Tó Nizhóní Ání, and as well as the watershed restoration project lead for Tó Nizhóní Ání. I'm overseeing the watershed restoration efforts from our organization, all the way from surveying all the way down to monitoring, and I lead and coordinate all that effort from TNA. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. So that's our presenters for this webinar today. Andrew and I are in the same room, so you might see us like shifting back and forth with muting and unmuting. So I just wanted for folks to keep that in mind in case they might hear an echo. So again, that's our presenters for this webinar, and they've got really good information that they're going to be sharing with us in regards to their parts to talking about this this map. So before we begin the actual discussion, I wanted to kind of give our audience more background information on who we are as an organization. So again, we are the nonprofit called Tó Nizhóní Ání, which we translate it in Navajo as Sacred Water Speaks. We are Diné/Navajo led. We are an environmental justice nonprofit organization, and we were founded in 2001. And we come from the community, the Zitlansa Big Mountain community on the Navajo Nation. And our founders are Nicole Horseherder, Marshall Johnson, Percy Deal, and Valencia Edgewater, all coming from the Black Mesa region, as well as here is our, sorry, let me turn on my annotations really quick. Okay, and this is our logo right here. So just wanted to kind of give you, when you see that logo, that's our organization, as well as the message of Protect Navajo Water. Okay, so a little background on our organization is that, again, we translate it as Sacred Water Speaks. We are a Diné-led nonprofit organization established in 2001. Our organization originates from the Zitlansa Big Mountain community on Zitlajin, the Black Mesa region, and we were formed in spirit of the Diné elders who fought to protect Black Mesa. Here's a good photo right here by Kenji. And then in 2005, Tó Nizhóní Ání led efforts to end the industrial use of the Navajo Aquifer, Black Mesa's only source of potable water from Peabody Coal Company. Today, our organization continues the work of water protection while working to bring power back to our Diné communities impacted by coal and leading community transition away from fossil fuels. So that's a little background information on who we are as an organization. And if you want to learn more, you're more than welcome to check out our website at tonizhoniany.org. So, all right, so now that we've got more information on who we are as an organization, I also wanted to give time to Anna with Four Corners Mapping and GIS to introduce the company involved with helping us out here. Excuse me, let me clear the annotations. Okay, I will pass it over to Anna.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. My name is Anna Riling. I own Four Corners Mapping. I'm located in Durango, Colorado. I actually lived in Flagstaff for 10 years. My focus is creating maps that tell the story of a place. I believe that beautiful, carefully crafted maps have the power to advocate for meaningful causes and protect the natural world. My work combines precision with artistry, distilling complex data into clear, engaging visuals that provide context and invite inquiry. As a geologist, I worked as a professional geologist for the last 20 years and came into GIS and cartography about 10 years ago. And so I bring a lot of that analytical nature into my maps. For projects like Black Mesa, we wanted to give voice to the landscape and the people who rely on it. And I really enjoy using maps as a platform for advocacy and understanding. And then what is cartography? So cartography is the art and science of making maps, and that involves gathering, analyzing, and visualizing spatial data to communicate information and phenomena about places, landscapes, and relationships in the world around us. Maps are more than just tools for navigation, more than a way to get from A to B. It's more than Google Maps, of course. They help us tell stories, reveal patterns, and provide insight into complex environments. While making the Black Mesa map, cartography played a crucial role in making the invisible visible, whether that's through illustrating the difference in water well data between different agencies or showing the challenge in driving from place to place by illustrating the network of paved versus unpaved roads on Black Mesa. And so what is GIS? So GIS is an acronym for Geographic Information Systems. It's a technology used to capture, manage, analyze, and display spatial or geographic data. It allows us to layer different types of information like water sources, roads, the extent of the end aquifer, streams, aerial imagery, topography, to better understand the relationships between those things and analyze the patterns across a landscape or visualize the patterns. For the Black Mesa project, GIS helped compare data sets from different agencies and visualize the challenges of accessing remote areas. It's an incredibly powerful tool for analysis and storytelling. So what is the difference? Adrian added this question. What's the difference between cartography and GIS? Cartography is the making of a map, and it focuses on how to visually represent geographic information in a clear, accurate, and engaging way. Cartographers make decisions about things like color, symbols, labels, and the layout to ensure the map effectively communicates its message and tell the story. The map that Adrian's going to show you is the end result of many, many different versions that we went over, and we went through trying to bring out the most important features of this landscape. So in versus GIS is the technology used to gather, manage, analyze, and visualize that spatial data. So GIS provides the tools to handle large data sets and run spatial analyses and uncover patterns and relationships in geographic information. So in short, GIS is the process of working with geographic data, while cartography is the craft of turning that data into meaningful, readable maps. So for example, for the Black Mesa project, GIS was essential for organizing and analyzing the data for the roads and water sources because it came from a lot of different sources, while cartography brought those findings to life and helped to illustrate the relationship between the mine, the streams, the roads, the topography, and the aquifer, among other things on Black Mesa. So just a small example, the width of the lines of the streams on the Black Mesa map varies by the surface area of the upstream drainage areas of each individual segment, and that attribute is embedded in the spatial data. So a cartographic technique was used to visualize data provided in GIS or in the geographic information system. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for providing that. I think that's really good information. I wanted to ask that question. I put that question there because, again, we got some folks who might just be like new to a lot of this information, and I'm glad that you were able to break that down with what is cartography, what is GIS, and how it's used. And also, I mean, to the college students out there who are tuning in, or also who might be listening to our recorded webinar, is that, I mean, there are classes like this, and this is a good opportunity, a good tool to utilize, especially if you're considering working in this area of environment and things like that. So again, thank you, Anna, for providing that background information.
And Adrian, just so you know, I'm not really able to see if anyone's putting anything in the chat. I'm not able to see it, and I'm not able to put a message in the chat.
Okay. Okay,
just FYI.
Okay. So again, for those that are just now joining us, this webinar is actually being recorded. So if you missed any of the previous information, just know that it'll be, we'll record it and we'll post it to our website and YouTube channel, which I'll provide the info at the end. But again, welcome and to our first webinar of 2025. So with that, I am going to move on to the next slide, which is, okay. So the map purpose. So this part of the slide, I wanted to talk about how did we get here? So for example, we had no map prior to this. Well, we somewhat had a map, but it's not to the extent the information we wanted. And so how did we get here? And again, this all happened in 2024. Towards the end of 2024, I reached out to Anna, and I found her her post on social media, and I was really just amazed by the information. So that's where I decided, let me reach out and contact Anna. And so that's where it happened in 2024. And this map here actually protected Dolores. This is one of the first maps that I saw, and I was just amazed by it. And I loved, like, I don't know, I really like this type of data, this information, because it gives people information on what this area entails. And so I always thought, why can't we have a map like that for Black Mesa? So this was the first map that I saw, which is really awesome. And so then from there, that I guess pushed me into starting to reach out to Four Corners Mapping in GIS. And again, this is the website for Four Corners Mapping in GIS. And then before we started, like I mentioned earlier, we have a map that we've been using for our outreach and things like that as an organization. Here's an example. This is the map that we use when we do tabling events, or when somebody might ask the question, well, where is Black Mesa? So this was the original map that we used. We pulled this from the USGS Black Mesa Water Study Program. And so we added some stars for the chapter houses, because again, a lot of people ask, well, where is Black Mesa and things like that. And so we utilized this little map to outline the areas in our communities. Again, this was what we had available, so we just went with it. And we also decided, again, we should have our own map. Let's create something. And then the last point here is that Black Mesa ? So a lot of times, for some folks who might not be familiar with Black Mesa, there's different areas within the Black Mesa region that often get confused and used interchangeably. For example, this white circle, let me turn on my annotation. So this white circle right here is actually the Black Mesa mine at the Black Mesa Peabody Coal Complex, which again, we'll talk about that next. But this white circle is actually the Black Mesa mine. And then we have the red circle here. This is the Black Mesa chapter community, also known as Kitzili in Navajo. And then we have this larger yellow, which is the greater Black Mesa Zitlichin region. So we call this region Zitlichin in Navajo, which really translates as Black Mountain. So that's the interesting thing, is that even amongst our own Diné people, Navajo people, whenever we say Black Mesa, they might think the mine site right here, the Peabody-Colis area, they might think Black Mesa Untitled Chapter, but we're referring to Black Mesa as this Black Mesa region, or Tzitlijin in Navajo. So we wanted to, that was one of the questions that always came up was, which Black Mesa are you talking about? You're talking about my chapter Black Mesa, or the Black Mesa region, or the Black Mesa mine? And so it's really interesting. So that's where we wanted to create that distinction, and that's where we eventually jumped on with this map development. So let's see. All right. So this next part, I'm going to give this to Nicole, and she will explain more of why did we create this map, really bringing this information down to what is the purpose? Why did we, outside of trying to distinguish these areas, what's the purpose of this map? So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Nicole. Do we have Nicole?
Yeah, hey everyone. Hello again. Thanks for joining us. So I want to start out by saying that one of the inconsistencies we saw with the maps that were available already to us is the misplacement of some of the communities and some of the information on the map. So can we see the very first picture that that we have? So one of the things that we saw in a map that we were using from the USGS is the placement of hard rock chapter. And so just simply put, through working with Anna, we were able to put hard rock in its right location. The other, so can we see the next map? The next illustration? But this is kind of where our focus led, and that is that we wanted to be able to capture on the maps, and none of the maps that are in use right now have been able to illustrate the water sources across the Black Mesa region. And more specifically, for the reclamation work that we've been doing, one of the things that we have been trying to pinpoint is the number of water resources that were in the area, in the lease area, prior to mining. This has been really difficult data to get a hold of. What we have found out is that a lot of the different entities and agencies have database, and some of the information overlaps, but a lot of it doesn't. So like, for instance, if you are going to look at the springs, in the case of this map, some of the work that Anna has been able to do is place springs onto the map, and that's illustrated in red. And then the one that's a little more difficult is the well data, which is in blue, and you can see that kind of scattered across the plateau as well, the Black Mesa Plateau. And then, you know, the white dots, which represent water sources, also are represented by the white circles, and that's coming from the Arizona Department of Water Resources, while the red and the blue dots are coming from the Navajo Nation. And we saw some inconsistencies in some of the data that both the ADWR and the Navajo Nation had, in terms of like the distinguishment between what wells are and what wells and windmills. So that's something that we saw also. But as we move to trying to pinpoint the water resources in the mine area, it started to get really messy really quick. There's a lot of, like, if you start overlapping the Navajo Nation's data and then the Department of Water Resources data to try to see where some of the, if like, say for instance, ADWR's data can make up for some of the gaps in the Navajo Nation's data, it just becomes this tiny space with a lot of information in one space. So here we understand that we're going to have to do some more work, and it's going to require really pinpointing what data points each of them share and what data points need to be filled in. The other thing that can you go to the next illustration? More specifically, what we were trying to achieve with getting these water resources mapped onto, especially the mine lease area, because at this point in time, Peabody has pretty much is using the maps that are being relied on right now are in large part Peabody's data. The maps are Peabody's maps. And the Navajo Nation, and I'm assuming the Hopi tribe also, relies heavily on these maps. These maps are void of the water resources that were there prior to mining, and they still are today. So water resources, traditional water resources or pre-mining water resources don't readily show up on Peabody's maps. What we're trying to achieve with this particular map here is that you see here N9, and N9 represents a reclaimed area, and it's located in the more northern part of the lease area. We have been using old, late 60s, early 70s BIA topo maps, interchangeably with the maps that we get from USGS and Peabody. But one of the things, the issues that we have as we're trying to advocate for proper and robust reclamation is that we're not just talking about reclamation of lands. On Black Mesa, we're talking about reclamation of water sources as well, be it wells or earthen dams, for livestock, ponds, and springs and seeps, and any wells that may have been existed pre-mining. We don't know this information readily. There isn't a map out there that can tell us what the water resources were and what needs to be reclaimed. We're completely reliant on Peabody's information, and the federal agency, Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation and Enforcement, also relies on that same information. So one of the things that we wanted to do here at TNA is to be able to bring back the water resource information so that we can clearly say, because one of the questions that OSM posed to us as many of us were talking about the need to reclaim the water resources was, well, where's the information that shows what water resources need to be addressed? So again, the agency has put it back on us to find that information, this is not the way that, of course, it's supposed to work. So what we've done, one of the things we've done is by using the old topo maps, which is not a complete illustration of all the Navajo resources, is we were able to identify springs in these areas where the lands are being reclaimed, and at least get them back onto the maps. So you can see here the early 70s topo map from BIA shows this spring, and it's unnamed. So we have a little bit of work to do about getting named to these springs, because many of the springs are named, many of the water resources are named, but some are not. In this case, this one here that lies right against the N9 reclaimed areas is unnamed. So if you can go back to the previous illustration, the X marks the area approximately where the spring is in relationship to the N9 reclaimed areas. So when Adrian was at one of the meetings that OSM facilitated down in Kayenta, he asked them directly, what about the spring that was located next to N9? What is the status of that? Does it still produce water? how is that going to, if it doesn't, then how is that going to be addressed? Immediately, and I should let him tell this story himself, is that immediately he said that the after the meeting, the OSM officials came up to him and asked him where he had gotten that information from. So we have a lot of work to do ahead, and we are working diligently to find the funding that will allow us to continue to do the work, but also to do it in a way that allows the map itself to tell the story that we need it to tell. Because sometimes just verbalizing it to a bunch of, like, say, OSM officials and Peabody officials is just not enough. I just wanted to end there and say that I really look forward to continue working with Anna on this information. But in terms of reclamation, I think these illustrations really show that there's data out there, but the data doesn't exist on the maps that will help get us to the right kind of action from the mine enforcement agency and the coal mine operator themselves, and really help Navajo Nation to start monitoring the water resources that they have. All the agencies recognize that these are Navajo Nation resources. However, if the Navajo Nation doesn't know that these resources exist, then there's very little that they can do about it. So our goal is to make sure that all the parties involved, especially with reclamation, understand Navajo water resources in this way. So I just want to end it with that. And thanks a lot again for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicole, for providing that information on why we're creating this type of map and why the previous maps before this are always inconsistent. So again, thank you, Nicole, for that. And then for those, again, who are just now joining us, if you have any questions, we're going to hold them until the end of the webinar if we have time. But if not, go ahead and enter your questions in the chat. And some of our team members might answer them, or we'll wait till the end. But again, the chat is open for you to utilize to put in any questions and things like that. So, all right. So now that we've got more information, you all have an understanding, a bit of an understanding as to why we created this map. We want to then break down this Black Mesa cartography map. And in this area, for this discussion on the map itself, the one that we created with Four Corners Mapping in GIS, is that there's going to be 4 areas that we're going to be talking about for this map. Part 1 is going to be, we're going to bring Nicole back on, and she's going to be talking about the Black Mesa Coal Complex. And then part 2 is myself. I will be talking about the chapter houses / boundaries, Grazing District 4, as well as the reservation and county lines. So I'll be talking about those 3 and where you can find them, what they look like on the map. And then part 3 is going to be Delegate Simonson, and Delegate Simonson will be talking about the Navajo partitioned lands, the roads and landmarks that are also found on this map. And then as well as last part will be Andrew, and Andrew will be talking about the Navajo Aquifer and Waterways, which are also illustrated on this map. All right, so again, we're going to bring Nicole back on, and Nicole will talk about part 1 of this map discussion, which is the Black Mesa Coal Complex.
Yeah, so I think I explained as best as I could the problem with mapping the water resources within the the Peabody Western Coal Company's lease area, which consisted at one time of both Black Mesa Mine and Kayenta Mine. And this illustration here pretty much shows the mine lease area. And we have been advocating for the last, I don't know, a very long time, probably since our organization started. At that time, the mines were still in, both mines were still in operation. and they were using an enormous amount of groundwater in the region to support the coal mining. Black Mesa mine alone was using anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 acre feet a year, which is an enormous amount of water, especially in the desert. It is the location for the only slurry line in the United States and probably in the whole world, which is ironic because we were in a high desert and we get less than 8 inches of rainfall a year, according to the USGS, but probably today a little bit less than that. But basically, when we really started talking about reclamation, right around when the Navajo Generating Station, which is part of this coal industrial complex, was talking about closure in 2017, we really started moving on the issues of reclamation. So, of course, we, up until that point in time, we, like I said, we were reliant on the maps that existed from the USGS and Peabody. And oh my gosh, the name just slipped me, the regulatory authority, OSM, sorry, at that time was also, and still is relying on data that Peabody collects, on the maps that Peabody creates, and so on and so forth. And the Navajo Nation does so also. But we've been on more than a dozen mine site tours since then, looking at these reclaimed areas, and then comparing them to the information that's on the BIA topo maps. And we can see that, of course, a lot of the water resources that was captured by the BIA data is, of course, either deleted or they never, doesn't even exist on the Peabody maps. So our job, of course, we feel like our job going into the future and working with Anna is to continue to place, especially the traditional seeps and spring information, any water discharge places, and old water livestock ponds, water ponds that were placed there especially by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, to make sure that those are reclaimed as well. So I want to just end there, and I think that as far as reclamation is concerned, I feel like I've given as much information as I could in the most clear way that I can, and I really like to allow both Anna and Germaine to chime in.
I was just going to add that when we started this project, Nicole mentioned the many sources of water well data, and that they didn't always match each other, and they differed a lot. I started out by looking at Arizona DWR, Division of Water Resources data. They have a series of hydrologic reports for Navajo and Hopi nations, and those reports attempt to synthesize data from a bunch of different sources. So the DWR gathered shapefiles, GIS data from Hopi and Navajo tribes, as well as the NWIS, which is the National Water Information System, that's USGS data, the Arizona DWR data, the groundwater site inventory. There's also a data set called the Geographic Names Information System, and that has a lot of spring data, and then topo maps, and some other sources as well. I think they probably also went and used Google Earth and just visually identified wells that they heard about. But that said, I think it was as comprehensive as the report could get, but there were other wells that were not included in that data. I requested data from a bunch of different sources, including the BIA and the Navajo Nation Water Management Branch, And then Andrew painstakingly went through the historical topos and identified all of the water sources on those topos. And you know that some of those sources had showed wells where the DWR data didn't, and vice versa. So it was kind of a challenge. And like Nicole said, throwing that all on a map, it was just too much. So I think Adrian's going to talk about some options later to visualize that, but I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Anna, for that. So quickly, for those that are seeing the screen right now, the Black Mesa mine and Kayenta mine is visualized with this gray transparent inside of this design here. This is the Black Mesa and Kayenta mine. Black Mesa mine is situated right here, and then the Kayenta mine is this part. And then the Black Mesa / Lake Powell Railroad is actually this signified here. You'll see it on the greater map. And then the Black Mesa pipeline was not is not on this map because it was already taken down, but it would have existed around this area, I believe, and then it would have gone off Black Mesa. So just to kind of give viewers an idea of what that the Black Mesa coal complex looks like on this map. All right, so the next part, I'm going to be talking about the following items here. And so for the map discussion part 2, I wanted to highlight the chapter houses and boundaries, grazing district, and reservation and county lines. So when you look at the greater map for the Black Mesa cartography map, we wanted to really amplify and visualize the Black Mesa region in our chapters on the Black Mesa region. For example, sorry, somebody's writing all over this thing. All right, so again, on this map, you're going to notice these red little houses here. These are actually all of the chapter houses located on Black Mesa. And for those who are not familiar with what a chapter house is, it is our most local form of government on the Navajo Nation. Each of these little red houses is a chapter house, a building where a lot of our officials sit within our community. And there are a total of 110 Navajo chapters on the Navajo Nation, and the Black Mesa region is home to 7 of those 110 chapters on the Navajo Nation. We've got Hard Rock right here. We've got the community of Pinon, which is our biggest town on Black Mesa. We've got Forest Lake. We've got Black Mesa / Kitzili. And then we've got Blue Gap / Tachi chapter. And then we have Whippoorwill and Low Mountain down here. So on this map, again, we really wanted to highlight our communities, where they sit in the greater Black Mesa region, where are their chapter boundaries, and also like how spread apart we are from one another if you were ever to visit our region. So, okay, so again, these are the chapter houses. So these are where all the chapter houses sit, the buildings. And then also you're gonna see this darker gray line here. These are the chapter boundaries. So you're going to kind of notice, if you look really good, you'll see it, these areas here. So this community of Hard Rock is where I am from. So this is our community of Hard Rock and our chapter boundary. Up in this area right here, this is the Forest Lake chapter community. And then up on top, way up here on the northern edge of Black Mesa, this is the Black Mesa Kitzili chapter community. And then again, we've got the Blue Gap / Tachi chapter community, which is located here. This is their chapter boundary. And then again, Pinon is right here, our biggest town on Black Mesa. If you were to visit, you would think, wow, this is a pretty small place for the biggest town on Black Mesa. And then Whippoorwill community is located right here. And then lastly, Low Mountain community is located right here. So this is the chapter boundaries for our communities on Black Mesa. And then again, you're going to notice we've tried to use the Navajo names to help make it less confusing to people who might confuse Black Mesa with the Black Mesa region, Blue Gap with the Gap community on Navajo as well, which is why we incorporated Tachi and Kitzili next to these chapter names. And then the next part is the Grazing District 4. So there's a lot of very interesting things on Navajo. We've got a lot of boundaries, we've got a lot of overlapping layers of things. And one of them here is the Grazing District 4. So this is more for like grazing in regards to our grazing officials, those that are looking at land management and things like that. If you were to see this green, this is the Grazing District 4. So you're going to notice this Grazing District 4 does not encompass Low Mountain Community. That community falls on another grazing district. So we've got grazing officials who from each chapter who are represented that oversee these areas, and also their district. This is the District 4. So we've also wanted to incorporate that, is that our chapter communities as well as their grazing districts in regards to grazing and things like that, grazing permits and all that stuff. And then the last part I also wanted to highlight is the reservation and county lines. So you're going to notice the Navajo reservation. Of course, this area is all Navajo, but the one that's more distinct is the Hopi reservation, which you're going to see here is this gray, like a darker blue, right in this area. So this whole entire line here is the Hopi reservation line. So you can see it really, it's in border with a lot of these communities. Our community of Hard Rock is right along the Hopi reservation line. And then we have the Navajo County. So you're going to notice on this map, this white, this dark gray dotted line here that comes down straight through this area right here through the Blue Gap community. On this side of the line is the Navajo County, and then on this side of the line is Apache County. So when you look at the map as a whole, you're going to notice this line through here where it has Apache County and Navajo County. And as we go further west on the Navajo Nation, you're going to also notice Coconino County as well show up. So we just wanted to kind of make that distinction, is that our area has got a lot of overlapping boundaries to our communities. So we also wanted to make sure that we highlighted that information in the event that maybe our young people from this area might not know where is the county line, why does that fence here, why is that sign right here? Well, that's to signify these boundaries and things like that. So that's my part of the presentation. I wanted to share that with you when you all see the greater map on why we put these areas on this map and what it looks like. So I'm going to move on to the next. And we're going to have Delegate Simonson go ahead and speak on these areas of this presentation.
Thank you, Adrian, for that. And I'm going to be covering a few things on the map. So we have the Navajo partition lands, and there is a whole history behind that and why it's called the Navajo partition lands. If you want to learn more about that, there is quite a bit of literature, studies, books, and even a documentary about a historical event that took place back in the 70s, and that was the Navajo-Hopi land dispute. And so if you want to just Google that really quickly, and some of you in the audience are very well aware of this history, this time in our history. So Navajo-Hopi land dispute of 1974. I don't know the exact year, but if you look at that, there's quite a bit of literature on that and what happened then. So before, at that time, there were no clear boundaries or lines, reservation lines between Navajo and Hopi up in our region. So and at the same time, you've heard Nicole mention quite a bit Peabody Coal Company. So right at that same time, right at that moment in time, they were looking to see whose lands these were, as they were ready to start, they explore and create contracts for the coal mining companies. They needed to see which tribes they would enter into contracts with. And so at that time as well, they were looking, for a Navajo, so who would they contract with? And those lines were not clear. And historically, we've shared the lands with the Hopi tribes, and they had their uses, we had our uses. A lot of our Navajo families were living all throughout what is now known as the Hopi partition land. And if you see it, there's a mountain there, big mountain, and all of that region there, and also where you see Rocky Ridge, or that region where it's now Hopi partition lands. A lot of our Navajos live throughout there in history. And when relocation was over, they pretty much say that Hard Rock lost 2/3 of its land base. And we had a large number of our people who relocated, who had to be relocated. So when the lines were drawn, they were caught on the Hopi partition lands. And so they were given an option to move elsewhere. And a lot of our families took those options and left those areas, left their homelands. So it is a real, I believe, a tragic time in our history. It continues, we continue to suffer a lot of those issues from those issues today. So as Adrian mentioned, we have our Navajo partition land, our Hopi partition land. Hard Rock, as you can see in that the big red chapter house, that's our chapter government. That is where so oftentimes our Mayaj Percy Deal, who's been a long time community leader, as well as a delegate, as well as a county leader, and he was one of the people who really helped the people get through relocation period in time as a translator. He always says, we sit in the mouth of Hopi, is what he says. So if you see Hard Rock and Rocky Ridge there, we're completely surrounded by Hopi. And in some of the roads in there traveling through are sitting on Hopi boundaries as well. So when he says we sit in the mouth of Hopi, that's what he's talking about. So interesting, I know Adrian posts about it sometimes. We also have to deal with the time change a lot through that region, because we are on daylight savings time now on the reservation on Navajo, but Hopi stays on Mountain Standard Time. So just be careful when you drive through there, because your clock will be switching every 1 or 2 miles. So just study that before you come through, so you can be on time to wherever you're traveling. So next we have landmarks, and we talk about, on our homelands all through the nation, on indigenous lands in general as well, but more specifically here on our Navajo Nation, there are a lot of landmarks. We have mountains, we have places that hold historical references. We have names for a lot of things, and as you can see, we have Big Mountain. That's one of our mountains here in our region that we hold sacred, and that is Zichnitsa, and that is there. And my family personal story is my grandma always mentioned that she was born at the base of Big Mountain. So she was born at a time where there were no hospitals. So, wherever the families were living at the time, what she was told was that she was born at the base of Big Mountain there. So that's a historical landmark. We have other historical landmark right there by Forest Lake. We have Nota Ahazna, which is a place where the Utes traveled, and the locals there and the people in that region have a lot of stories about that. And so a lot of these places hold a lot of stories, and so it's good to visit those places and get that information from your local people. And then at the bottom near Pinyon is there's a mountain top, a mountain range there called Zifteshrini. And again, that almost refers to black, I guess, Black Mountain. And so we're talking about in general, we're talking about Black Mesa, but then there's this place called Zifteshrini. And that's, I believe in English, they call it Little Black Spot Mountain. That's often how they refer to it when they're trying to, bring infrastructure through the area, or they identify as Little Black Spot Mountain is what they're, that's what it's often referred to as. Out there, way to the right, near Blue Gap Touchy, there is right there by Baird Route 29 is what it's called, Cottonwood. There's another area called To'aten Tahazta, and that again is something that the locals commonly refer to those areas. So they have names for it. So No Ta'ahazna is a pass. Actually, it's a pass. It's a route, a road that the Utes it's named after. And so there's an original road there, but I know with the coming of the highway, they rerouted. So it sits just parallel to the highway, and that area still is there. The roads, you could still see where the roads went. In this map, you also see major roads, which is really good for me to refer to as an elected official for my communities here. And as an elected official, we have areas. They made it, our Navajo Nation government made it to where we cover several by population, but several chapters. So certainly there's some delegates who only represent one chapter, and a lot of times it's your town-like chapter, your agency chapters, like Chinle has just one delegate. Not Delcon. Shiprock has just one delegate. Tuba City has just one delegate. And because they're really, they hold large populations of people. So because my community is more rural and our population is sparse, I do cover 5 chapter local governments, and they're all on the map here. You see Forest Lake up there. You see Black Mesa. There's Hard Rock in here. There's Pinon. And then I also have Whippoorwill at the bottom of a little bit below Pinon. And then below Mountain, interestingly enough, is another delegates region. Even though I'm sitting right next, I feel like they could be one, but we're not. So I cover Whippoorwill, Pinon, Hard Rock, Forest Lake, and Black Mesa, and those are the regions that I cover, and those are the chapters that I represent as I do my work. But you do see in there the roads, and in my region, what's really important to know in my region and is that I do not have one highway that is completely paved that connects. I have a lot of disconnected highways. So if you've never been to my region and you want to travel to my region, just be careful, because it appears that there's a highway, and there is, but it stops at some point, and then you find yourself on a dirt road that is minimally maintained. So it can be dangerous, especially during winter, or rainy seasons when it's muddy or icy with snow. So I have I have 8031, which is one of the major routes for our communities. It goes from Pinon to Hard Rock. And that road is pretty much from Pinon to Hard Rock is all dirt road. And that is one of I believe 60 years later, we have majority of the money to pave that route. But what people have a hard time understanding is that from that valley, that the road that will go through was Anasazi city. So there is a lot of historic preservation that needs to be done there that really has delayed the road construction. So that is a presentation in itself. Up on top of N8031, you have M8029, which is also a major highway, not major highway, major road for the community. And that goes really from Hard Rock and connects out to Forest Lake. That is all dirt road as well. And that's a lot of that road is in Hopi, on the Hopi reservation, the Hopi partition lands. So, and that one is also complicated because technically it would be up to Hopi. It would be their responsibility to maintain that road. However, because they only get so much money from the federal government to maintain roads, it isn't enough. They're concerned more about their where their people live, and they don't have people that live back here. So they don't put any money towards N8029. So that is not very well taken care of. So we have so in this, and as Adrian and Nicole mentioned, there's just so much information you could put on this map, but because it just would make you dizzy by the time you put all this information on, you almost need one to use one map just for roads, and then get another map going maybe just for the historical sites and such. So there's very useful for me, because then, when I talk about my roads and I come before my colleagues, I can really show them that, look, here are the roads, here are the main roads, and I do not have one connecting highway. And you see they're up on Black Mesa as well in 8066. So that's another one. You see it partially paved, and then you start to see the dots all the way up into Black Mesa to Black Mesa Katsili. We still have about 8 to 10 miles of road that still need to be paved through there. And so it does cut off. And so we have certainly several of these situations happening. Adrian, are you going to the next slide for the resource solutions? Do you want me to go there?
So that is going to be after Andrew's slide.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Simonson, for sharing that information. We're going to move on to Andrew. And again, just to clarify on the map, the green with the white outline are the paved roads, and the dotted green and white lines are actually, with the white outline as well, are the dirt roads. So just to kind of give folks a visual, but we're going to go ahead and move on to part 4, which is going to be Andrew.
Alrighty, everybody. I am going to talk about the Navajo Aquifer and the different waterways that are associated with Black Mesa that reside within this region. I'll put on my cursor here. The Navajo Aquifer boundary that's outlined on this map, this is an identified USGS boundary here that we included for the Navajo Aquifer, which is underneath the residents that live within Black Mesa. This is the aquifer that the mine used to transport coal in a slurry pipeline some 270 miles away to a generating station outside of Arizona boundaries. And the extent of this Navajo aquifer even goes beyond a little bit of Black Mesa, and it extends into areas like in Tuba City. But this is what this outline represents. It's the Navajo aquifer and its extent. The other things I wanted to mention here are the waterways that are on Black Mesa. We have Mo and Kopi Wash. This is an outline all the way from west to east. Mo and Kopi Wash. It's very faint here, but you can see through here that it drains all the way into Tuba City and then eventually to the Little Colorado River, starting way up near the rim of Black Mesa on the very west side. Denebito Wash is just next to it. this wash goes through the closer to the Big Mountain region, and it drains eventually into the Hopi Reservation area and then down into the Little Colorado River. A Ribey wash, which is the third one from the west. This drainage, again, starts way up high in the Black Mesa rim area and drains down eventually into the Little Colorado River. And it hits into a community called Tulani Lake, which this water, it will eventually reach into the Little Colorado River, but that Tulani Lake region has a bit of a marsh or a wetland area where the water does slow down a little bit. And then lastly, we have Palaca Wash, which is farther to the east, their easternmost waterway here in the region. I want to highlight here that Weepo Wash and Burnt Corn Wash are two different subtributaries to Palaca Wash, which are outlined here on the map, as Weepo and Burnt Corn here eventually feed into Palaca Wash. So with these waterways, we want to showcase that Black Mesa has existing washes that run ephemerally, and at one point some areas were running perennially, but nowadays this is what exists nowadays on Black Mesa. The Moenkopi Wash is appearing to be gutted from the mining effects on the mine site there, and it cuts right through where the mine site is. And this Moenkopi Wash is one of those areas where perennial water used to flow, but has since it does not after mining efforts there. And with all these other washes, with drought, with more intense rainstorms, erosion becomes a very high priority issue for communities, especially when infrastructure and roads are concerned. And outlining these washes in relation to where the roads are paints the picture for potential issues that may come about in the future if erosion becomes worse. And when you see a larger resolution image of this map, you can really see where all these washes connect and where it eventually flows down. But showing that these washes originate on Black Mesa, we actually contribute to the Little Colorado River. Black Mesa is the headwaters to, or is one of the headwaters to the Little Colorado River, and is a significant contributor to the runoff and the water amounts that are in that tributary to the Colorado River as well, which we all know as a very important water source for the American West. But that's all I wanted to showcase here on my section here for the Navajo Aquifer and Waterways. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. It was really good to share that information, especially with the audience, to figure out the various waters. Just to go back to the Navajo Aquifer, he mentioned that it also extends into Tuba City. So there's also the confined aquifer and unconfined. And so all of the confined aquifer is what's pretty much sitting under Black Mesa, and unconfined are the areas like Tuba City, Shanto, Kayenta, Denebito, just different areas off of Black Mesa. So we didn't want to illustrate that on this map because it'd be a little bit more challenging, but we wanted to kind of give you that a little bit of understanding as to where the confined and unconfined aquifers sit. But all of Black Mesa is considered confined because the Black Mesa region sits on top of it, so it's a little bit it comes out as more of like these seeps and springs and things like that. With that, we're going to then move on. So this is the greater map. So again, this is the map that was created, the final product, thanks to Anna with Four Corners Mapping GIS. This is the product here, and we really wanted to showcase where does the Black Mesa region sit within the greater Navajo Nation. And so I think this map does a really good job of telling that story. Where do we sit? Where does my chapter, where does my community sit in this greater map of the Black Mesa region, and also parts of the Navajo Nation? So what you see here is mostly Navajo Nation, Arizona. Of course, you have Navajo Nation in New Mexico, you have Navajo Nation in Utah, but for this map, It's predominantly in Arizona, and you can see on the left-hand side the boundaries of the Navajo Reservation on the western edge, as well as it lines up with the Colorado River and also the Little Colorado River, which feeds in to make the Greater Colorado River. And like Andrew had mentioned, a lot of the waterways that feed into the Little Colorado River, also known as LCR, and also just kind of where our communities sit. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide for Delegate Simonson. And this is the question of how do you envision the use of this map?
Thank you, Adrian. So as we were talking about presenting information about this map and how important it is for communities, and I don't really know who's all on our guest list here watching this webinar. I would hope that there's a lot of community folks watching this. And on Navajo, what I've noticed as a tribal leader up to this point is, if you don't know, Navajo Nation is 27,000 square miles. We have the Navajo Nation and the Navajo tribe really has one of the largest land bases as a tribal nation. And part of some of the issues, and whether, some people see it as a problem, as well, some people might not see it as a problem, is we are sparsely populated. So we could, there's areas, majority of our community where our neighbor lives about a mile away, maybe 2 miles away. And so we don't have a lot of clustered homes. And we don't, and when I talked about Black Mesa, when I talked about Tuba City, when I talked about Chinle, Shiprock, those are the areas that have, they're little miniature cities. There's, maybe a lot of homes within that some certain amount of square footage. There's plenty, of homes sitting there. But a majority of our reservation is not that way. And so it is difficult when we really want to try to get our services out here. So when we're trying to get, our police services or social services, those can be challenging because the way that the federal government gives us money is they're looking at cities, they're looking at places where they say, okay, well, you get one police officer per so much population. And then in the city, that makes sense because then people live really, close to each other, and that, it could be a small radius, a short, the distance and the radius might be small for coverage, but on Navajo, it could be miles and miles and miles. And so those are just challenges that, that we face. And so what one of the ways that I thought that this map could really be helpful and where you could really use it to your benefit, if you're in the community and you're working in the community and you're working to improve your community, you want to start, you want to plan for your community and you want to establish a community that really takes, helps you plan so that you can have the proper resources so that you could, in this case, we talked about it in terms of, say, a land management. And so right now in our chapters, those of you just think about your chapter, your respective chapter, wherever you go to for chapter government. What I'd like to encourage our people to do is go back to your local chapter, ask, and some of you might already know what the CLUPC, Community Land Use Plan, is what it is. In short, we just call it CLUPC. So each community is given the authority to have a CLUPC committee. And I believe chapters, I'm not sure whether they're all the same or different, but there may be some CLUPCs. I believe ours has about 6 members, and they can be paid a stipend, and they come together, and their responsibility it gives the chapters authority and responsibilities to draw up plans for their communities, their community use, and also for future development. So they have the ability to identify farm plots, business sites, create established business sites, look at the roads and figure out how to make improvements based on probably your high traffic, areas or your bus routes, and also for economic development. So where is a good place for business opportunity? Because you need to identify places where you can set up your infrastructure for these businesses. So there's and hospitals maybe in the future, or whatever your community needs are. And so I would just really encourage each and every one of you, those that live within the Navajo Nation, even if you don't live within the Navajo Nation and you plan to return to your community someday, ask about your community land use planning committee. Ask if they have a recent CLUPC manual that they've worked on. Ask to give a presentation about what they are planning for the community, because as a central government, the administrative government in Window, as you know, when resources start to trickle down into our communities, they become less and less and less and less. And by the time that we see any resources come to our community, sometimes it's very little or even there's nothing. So this really is a way for communities to help plan for themselves. And I think having a cartography, having a map really to show things, that's really important. And certainly then from there, you can work up to the administration, to your to Department of Natural Resources, or to the Land Department, through your CLUPC, through that arm and that extension of the bigger government. You have then the ability to work through your CLUPC, whether you're a member, preferably a member, and you could work through your chapter to help you create the resolutions to request for the resources. And if you're more specific in what you need, I think it helps. It really does help. So getting maps maybe, and so getting that kind of information. What does our central government, what kind of information do they have that you can obtain through CLUPC? So are there farm plots, areas, and you could certainly use this perhaps to go through the land department and the obtain agricultural permits. So it could be useful in so many ways. And in this case with TNA, you're using it certainly to look at your watershed projects, so each community can really, really make it work to their benefit. What are your priorities? What are you working on? And through that CLUPC arm, you have the ability to communicate with RDC, the Resource Development Committee. You have the ability to communicate through the different departments of the Navajo Nation, and to get, to request for more support. So that's just something I want to encourage everyone to do, all of our Navajo folks, and really encourage you to look at your local CLUPC.
Thank you for that, Delegate Simonson. That's really a good, I really like what you had to say regarding like chapters. If they could even do, like, this is a greater Black Mesa region map, but just imagine if each chapter had their own cartography map. And you mentioned earlier that this map, there's so much going on that it's really hard to put everything on there. And one solution that I feel like is, imagine if each chapter blew up, highlighted their community, their boundaries, their original boundaries, and maybe what it is today. And then as well as, like, where do people live in their chapter boundaries? Because anytime I go to a chapter house, I like looking at maps too. Anytime I go to a chapter house, some chapters do a good job of displaying all the maps that they might get from the Navajo Nation. But a lot of times it's like one map is for roads, one map is for people where people live, one map is for water, all these things. But just imagine if you had one map where it had everything: roads, where people live, the water sources, the washes, And also, most importantly, those place names in Navajo. Like we have Nota'achasnane on this map, we have Ziltashine on this map. So each community has their own like traditional names for these, if they're willing to share and put that out there. But there are places in our communities that have really traditional names that maybe not everyone knows. And imagine if we created our own cartography map for our own individual communities that outlined all the traditional names for these places, why are they important. And then, but yeah, I just wanted to share that. Again, thank you so much for highlighting that, because that's really, hopefully it gets our Navajo audience gears rolling. Like maybe I want to start talking to my Klupsi about trying to get a map like that for my community. Again, thank you, Delegate Simonson, for that. And so we are coming to the end of our webinar. I know we went a little bit beyond time, but that's okay. It's a lot of good information that we wanted to share with everybody. And I feel like this is a good, and it's being recorded too. So if you need to hop off, you can always watch this recording later. All right, so with that said, I would like to close out with our webinar, is that what's next? So we went over the information on what this map entails, what does it look like, the different parts to this map. One of the things that we're doing next as an organization for Tó Nizhóní Ání is that the purpose of creating this map is that we wanted this as a reference for our communities, especially our Black Mesa region communities, because again, not a lot of people, even on Navajo, aren't familiar with the Black Mesa region, or they might not really know that people live up on top of Black Mesa. I had one friend tell me that. I didn't know people lived up there. So we want to really amplify our community's voices, make us more visible to the greater Navajo Nation and also the US, Arizona, and the world, that we are here on Black Mesa. This is our homelands, and also the different history, the deep history that we have on this region. And so the next thing that we have in stores for us is that we'll be presenting this map to our chapter communities on Black Mesa. So we have all these chapters. We're going to be doing community presentations. And then Nicole had mentioned earlier, and also Anna, was that the ArcGIS story map. So right now, that's one of our next projects that we're considering, is that we want to do a story map we talked about the water data, how a lot of it was inconsistent. There's like some department might have more data than the Navajo Nation, than the state, than the government. So there's just so much water data that we wanted to do a story map to tell that water story on Black Mesa. And so that's something coming up for the future. Right now, we are trying to figure out how to fund that, how to pay to get that story map created, because again, it's a lot of technical information. A lot of this goes into it and also requires resources. So that's one thing that we're trying to look for, is resources to help get this story map to tell the Black Mesa story. The map that we have so far is a start, and we want to take that a step further with the Black Mesa ArcGIS story map. The other thing is, we've also, now that this map is done, we are going to be presenting a copy, a 24 by 36 inch copy, a physical copy of the map to our chapters. So we're going to give our chapters a copy of this map, so that way they can display it within their chapter house, so that way visitors or people in their community can look at it to kind of see, this is where my community sits in the greater Navajo Nation, Arizona boundaries. And so that's one of the next steps, is we're going to be giving each of the chapter houses a 24 by 36. So if you're coming from a chapter on Black Mesa, be on the lookout for that map in your chapter, or even ask a chapter house, where is that map? Our hope is that they display it on their wall somewhere in the chapter house. But again, it's always good to ask the chapter for that, to look at that map. And then the next one is that we actually have 16 by 24 inch maps. They're a little bit smaller than the original bigger, large one that's going to the chapters, but we have those available. So if anybody is interested in receiving a copy of that map, we're asking for a donation to get a smaller 16 by 24 physical copy. So that's going to be posted on our website, www.tonizhoniany.org/black-mesa-map. So it's not on there right now, but after this webinar is concluded, we're going to upload the recording, and also where to donate to our organization to receive a copy, as well as we're going to have smaller physical copies at the chapter house as well. So if there's anybody in the community who wants a smaller copy, we're going to have that on the each of the chapter communities on Black Mesa. And then with that, I would like to turn it over to each of our speakers for any closing remarks before we completely close up with this webinar. So I want to pass it over to Nicole if she has any closing remarks.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the webinar, for joining us today. I just want to close out by saying that we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're, once we got to working with Anna and looked at some of the data, we realized that what we were asking for and the goal of our original project is much greater and much more complex than we anticipated. So I just would like to encourage everyone to be on the lookout for a future webinar, and hopefully at that time we will have a story map available for everyone to take a look at. But meanwhile, we were able to come up with this map, and hopefully it will be a great resource for the communities on Black Mesa who have had to rely on other places for their mapping. And this way, I foresee some economic development planning, some watershed planning, which is much needed, water planning, just community planning, various different aspects. Many people still rely on farming and grazing and graze livestock, or live a pastoral lifestyle on Black Mesa. So there are many ways that I see this map helping with that planning and development. So thanks very much again.
Awesome, thank you, Nicole. Delegate Simonson, do you have any last closing remarks?
Absolutely, and thank you for this opportunity, TNA, and the good work that you all are doing. But I just, wanted to emphasize that communities could use this for their benefit, really use it for their benefit. In one area that recently, we had a recent activity, an occurrence, an unfortunate circumstance that we had where an elder was lost within these boundaries here, or in the HPL boundaries near Hard Rock. And so I think about that and really the need to establish our community emergency response teams, and how maps are really critical to those when those issues and those times arise. And so I think, if folks could, there are so many wonderful ways to use it, but also it could really be useful in times of emergent situations as well. So just thank you. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed listening to everyone here, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Delegate Simonson. Anna, do you have any closing remarks?
I just want to say thank you for choosing me to make this map, and it was a pleasure working with you guys, and I learned a lot, and I hope that we can work together in the future. And also, I for some reason was not able to respond in the chat thread, and I saw some questions about the map come through. So you can email me, you can contact me through my website, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the map or the process. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Anna. And then lastly, Andrew?
Yes, I really like how this came together, and I'm really excited for future projects to further tell the story of Black Mesa, its residents, the people who call this place home. I really am inspired by just putting the story into content that everyone can get behind, and really display how vast this area is, and some of the things we still have to work on. My specific work is in watershed restoration, and this map really helps me to visualize where communities are, where the waterways go, and to strategize how to go about doing this restoration work. not just on a small scale, but on a very large regional scale. That's an eventual down the line thing, but one thing at a time, and just to see where that impact can greater affect people positively is really illustrated well on a map. And I look forward to working with Anna further on a potential ArcGIS story map and yeah, getting all those stories onto a map. I really enjoy maps. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Again, that is our speakers there. And so the next question might be like, how do we stay connected? So again, this webinar is going to be available on our YouTube channel at Tó Nizhóní Ání. And it's also going to be uploaded to our landing page. So we do have a landing page, tonizhoniany.org/Black Mesa map. And that's where a lot of this information is going to be found on this webinar recording, as well as where to donate to our organization to receive a copy of this map. So that's going to be on our landing page. And then also, if you want to stay connected with our organization, if you're not already following us, we can be found on social media at Tó Nizhóní Ání, TONIZHONIANI, and then also our website www.tonizhoniany.org. And then the same for Four Corners Mapping and GIS. That's their website there, fourcornersmapping.com. And then they can also be found on social media at Four Corners Mapping. Again, thank you all so much for tuning into our webinar and hearing what we had to say as regards to creating this beautiful map to tell the story of water, land, people on Black Mesa, and how everything interconnects and how rural and rugged some of these areas are by the disconnected roads. And again, thank you to our presenters for joining us to give our viewers a glimpse into our region, what we call home, and also visitors who might one day come through our community. And again, for those who might be watching the recording later, is that this is a really good information, and we will have maps available if folks are interested, and we're just asking for a donation to our organization to help cover the cost of getting these maps to you. Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to say, and I think we're going to go ahead and conclude this webinar. Again, thank you all so much for joining us on our webinar, and to also listen to what we had to say about this map. And this is not our only webinar on this map. This is the foundation, a beginning phase, and we anticipate another one for the ArcGIS story map, which we're excited about, and we might have another webinar then too. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and conclude there.